Everyone knows that feeling, wanting to experience more stories, but struggling to find the time. That's where Audible changes everything. With over 1 million audiobooks and Audible originals, there's a story waiting to spark anyone's imagination. Take The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, the gripping psychological thriller that's keeping listeners on the edge of their seats. Imagine unraveling its mysteries during your morning commute, or losing yourself in its twists and turns while doing household chores. That's the magic of Audible. It transforms daily routines into opportunities for thrilling discoveries. The best part? Members get access to thousands of included titles, with new content added regularly. From bestsellers to hidden gems, every genre imaginable is at their fingertips. And with one easy-to-use app, switching between favorites or discovering new passions has never been simpler. There's more to imagine when you listen. Start a free 30-day Audible trial and get your first audiobook free at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
Now it's time for Inspirational Women, and my guest, Diane Height, a retired teacher from Southern California who signed on to an amazing adventure. I feel that this can get us thinking of what we might do, regardless of our age, and definitely get us thinking of the chapter called Post-Retirement. What can we do? What have we dreamed of? Diane has also written about her experience in her book, A Mongolian Memoir, and she's here to share some insights. Diane Height, good morning, and thank you so greatly for being with us today.
It's my pleasure, Kate. I'm very excited about talking about Mongolia, every aspect of it. I love it. So, yes, thank you for having me.
Well, I am just so intrigued by your adventuresomeness. I guess that's the word. And, that you spent all that time in Mongolia. And what's interesting, because I think Mongolia, yes, we know it's somewhere over there on the other side of the world. Has it been a place I thought to travel to? No. But in your book, you say it's not that you chose Mongolia. Mongolia chose you.
Absolutely. Thank you for quoting that line, because that is exactly, I was thinking about that this morning, that, things happen in our lives, and maybe negative things, maybe things that we didn't want to happen, but then you turn it around. It's like that saying, I was given lemons and I made lemonade, and that's exactly how I look at Mongolia.
So we're not necessarily calling Mongolia some lemons, though. Or are we?
No, it was because I was at a crossroads in my life, and I was in my early 60s, 63, 64, and I was retired for a couple of years, and I was going through a divorce, and I needed some money. I needed an income. And so I sat down with a dear friend of mine, and we did my resume, and I ended up going, wow, who is this person? I look pretty good on paper. And so he looked at me. I'll never forget, because this was like a key going into a lock and turning. And he looked at me and he said, what have you always wanted to do your whole life? And I didn't even skip a beat, Kate. I looked at him and I said, I've always wanted to live and work in another country. And being a teacher, that's what I meant, at that point, teach in another country. So I pursued all these 50 schools. I didn't know what to do, and I'm kind of a go-getter anyway. So I just sent my resume to like 50 international schools, and rejection. And then I found out that there's a couple organizations that you can go through that place you. So that's what I did. And still, I was rejected, mainly because of my age, not by the school, but by the government. China, very restrictive on age. And so I had a job. It looked like I had a job in Thailand, but then I got a call from this recruiter in Mongolia, and I thought, give me a day or something like that. And I knew I'm a geographer, and I knew about Mongolia. Not that much, obviously, but what I wanted was something different. And what I have said is, I didn't want to just go to Europe because I've traveled to Europe. I wanted a different place. And that's what I got by going to Mongolia. And that was the beginning.
Oh, I can see how it was Mongolia that chose you. Although, backtracking just a moment, that question, what have you always wanted to do? What a great question for us to just keep in a tickler file to ask ourselves periodically, like, what have you always wanted to do? Are we there? It can change and that sort of thing. So that was really very insightful and wonderful of your friend.
Yeah, and Kate, I totally agree with you. And what I've discovered and why, one of the reasons why I wrote the book is, people in their third act like me, now I'm in my 70s, they're still, go for it. The sense of adventure has no age limit. And it doesn't, and I've told people, you don't have to go to Mongolia. That was my thing, or that is my thing. But whatever you have secretly kept hidden, inside that you haven't really shared with anybody, not even yourself. And I really put what I did in that category, that I kept it hidden. I didn't even know it was hidden. So I want not just women, but mainly women to, kind of like the saying, go for it. Mm-hmm. Do what you've always wanted to do, and don't let anybody tell you. And it was tough in the beginning. Friends and family are like, what are you doing and where are you going? And now I've done so many different things that they're, like my sons are just, okay, Mom, we know you're on a plane for, such and such. But anyway, the third act is exciting.
Well, and as it should be, life itself is a gift, to be cliche, but it truly it is. And then not to live it to its fullest is it's just wrong. And so you're doing that. You're living it.
Exactly. And a couple of people have brought up, well, what about health? And yes, I mean, you have to be healthy, and I am. I'm fortunate, and I know some people aren't, but there's other things that they can do. Again, you don't have to hop on a plane and take a 15-hour flight to, Mongolia. But, and if you've got issues health-wise, there's so much out there that, just start writing it down and, talking to people, going on the internet and doing some research. So I think it's important. Our generation, my generation, baby boomers, we're the first generation that's really had this opportunity, or thought maybe we did have this opportunity, because our parents and grandparents, they retired and that was it. And, that was it. And life expectancy wasn't as long as it is now. But we are, I raised my kids, and then I had a career, and then I've had this, and I'm not done. I don't know what awaits me, but it's always exciting to give it a try.
And is the teaching part of it, teaching and working in a different country, is that part of it done? Or are you just going to now be traveling? Well,
I don't know. And that's a good question. And I'm just going to say I don't know. I have some ideas, maybe do some tutoring in another country. We always think we can't do A, B, or C, or A. And yet we haven't really researched it. And I believe in opening things up to the universe, and things happen that you're like, wow, I didn't even know that was available. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's the answer to your question is I want to be available. I want to be open because we're limited and there's so much out there. I would have never thought in 2009 that I would be spending 5 years in Mongolia. I mean, I went, what? What do you mean? And so right now I'm open. And I think that's important for all of us to be open.
Yes, that is so perfect, that we need to be open, allow ourselves to be led, and then be surprised, because otherwise it's limiting, like we make up the answers before anything has happened, and well, we've created our own destiny then.
I love that, Kate. I mean, you're right. We do that. And I shared this with a friend about, maybe I'll see if I can do some tutoring, like in Mongolia, because of the weather. You really don't want to be there unless you have to be there during the winter, because I put up, the first winter I was there was the coldest winter in 30 years. And when I say cold, I'm talking minus 20, minus 30, minus 40. And I had no idea that it would get that cold. And I almost left. I almost didn't see it through. But I had a principal that first year, and it was around springtime, before springtime, but at spring break. And she said, just go home for a week and kind of get out of the system. And that's what I did. I hopped on a plane, and it's like 15 hours to get back to Los Angeles. And I saw friends and family, and I saw the Pacific Ocean, and I went back, and I was fine. Because when they hired me, I was I think I was the only person from Southern California. Mainly the teachers were from like Canada or very cold climates. And they were concerned when they hired me. They wanted me, but they went, oh, gosh, she's not used to this kind of weather. And it was tough. It was tough. But then after that, I knew what I was getting into. Mm-hmm. You have to like yourself. You have to find it, because you're inside so much for maybe 4 months out of the year. That's a lot.
And is school different there? Does it go year-round? Or did you have some big breaks, like we take summer vacations here for school? Yes,
I did. And they had basically the same schedule that I was used to. I taught in Southern California, and school started probably the end of August, first part of September, and then went through until June. And we had a week in the fall, a week again in like almost springtime. And then they gave, international schools usually give teachers 3 weeks at Christmas. And so that's nice. I would come home for, a month or so in the summertime. And then sometimes I didn't come home at Christmas. I would travel. But yes, it was nice having that time, that break.
So that you also explored Mongolia. You were able to take these treks out into the Gobi Desert. I mean, my heavens. And sometimes on your own. I mean, you would have an interpreter and a driver, but still solo. That's an adventure.
Yes. The last trip I took out in the Gobi, I was by myself, as far as I had a driver and an interpreter / cook. And so I was by myself, and it was fun. The first time I went was in the fall, and a friend had come from Hong Kong. And so that's when, in one of my chapters, where you see the Russian van fell into the river. And, my first experience with anything like this, and they had to get out and dig out the tires. And my friend, we looked at each other and we went, oh my gosh, what if they can't what are we going to do? There's nothing. If you get out of the capital city, Ulaanbaatar, or UB we call it, There's really there's some villages, but there's nothing. And then I discovered that had that happened, had we been really caught, he finally got the van out of the river, and after piggybacking us onto the ice. Anyway, we found out that there were gers, which are the round circular homes the nomads live in out in the country, that they would have taken us in. They would have fed us. They would have taken care of us. But I didn't know that. The Mongolians are very, very giving people. And you become part of their family, even though you're not family. And it's something that I learned kind of right away after that experience and just working with the Mongolians. They're just wonderful people.
So wonderful that. So you did that, you said, for 5 years. So basically in 2009 to about the mid-teens, right?
Well, what I did is I had a contract for 2 years, and then I came home for a couple of years, and then I went back for 3 years with a 3-year contract. So I had a break in between the 2 years and the 3 years, but altogether I was there 5 years. So
that obviously, again, says how much you loved the experience. And then you had said to me earlier that you're going back this summer.
Yes, I am. I'm going back for the first. I left in 2017, so it'll be 6 years. And I'm going back in this July, for almost the whole month. And if you remember reading in my book, there's a chapter on my driver, Dawa, and who was with me for 5 years. And he's picking me up at the new airport in Ulaanbaatar. And I'm so excited to see him. And I'll be staying with friends. And I'll be doing things that I used to do. And they're all excited. I'll go out to the Gobi and do that for probably 3 or 4 or 5 days, something like that. So I'm very excited. And I may check into in fact, I will check into any possibilities that could get me to Mongolia again in some capacity. I'm opening it up to the universe.
And it could be teaching, though, could it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tutoring or something. Absolutely. Yes. It'll be, I think, along the lines of teaching, but I'm open. I'm
yes.
always looking for the next adventure. I'm a wanderlust person.
Well, that is wonderful, and it goes back to being open rather than putting those limitations. It's like, well, I've tutored and I've taught. Well, but who knows what that morphs into and what other people see, like looking at your resume and saying, wow, who is this person? So, oh, yeah, what an adventure.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it's all coming together. So we'll, to be continued. Such a beautiful country and so much to offer.
And you're going in July. So we talked about the winter. I think July is consistent with our summer. We're northern hemisphere. And so temperatures will be what?
It'll be hot.
Oh.
It'll be, I live at the beach, so it'll be probably in the 90s, but that's fine. I've been there in June, and I've also been there in August. And I think, as I recall, August was hotter than June. So, yeah, no winter clothes, no mittens, no Russian hat that I have to wear to keep my head warm. Yeah, all very light clothing.
And so this is just really exciting to be going back again, reconnecting with friends and knowing, thinking about what could this open up to as the next chapter. But let's talk about the current chapters, which are in your memoir, A Mongolian Memoir, which is readily available for all of us to experience what you have done vicariously, right?
Exactly. Yes. Available on Amazon and available at Barnes and Noble.
Which is great. And, the thing, your adventures, well, who knows? Maybe more writing is part of it. Maybe writing in Mongolia about who knows what. But your writing is such a beautiful combination of prose and poetry. And
Oh, thank
really,
you.
well, I mean, it's something that you have. So who knows what that can lead to? But it just makes this adventure, and it makes the adventure of reading about your experiences so wonderful. You paint the pictures beautifully.
Well, thank you. Thanks. That means a lot. After I finished with Mongolia, I was still like, what should I do now? I spent a couple months. I think it was back in 2019. It was before COVID. I spent a couple months teaching in Italy, and then I got a job in Cambodia right in the middle of COVID, and I had a 2-year contract, but they reduced it to a year. And it's such a long story what I went through to get into Cambodia, but I did it. But I had, after being there for 6 months and right in the middle of all the COVID stuff, I had to leave. Not because I had COVID, but just I sort of saw the handwriting on the wall, like, am I going to be able to get back into the U.S.? Vaccines, I'm not sure about that. So, and I was really sad to leave because I love Cambodia. I love the people. They're very much like the Mongolians. And so then what I did is I picked myself up after coming back from Cambodia, and I lived for about 8 months in Kauai, which I loved.
Oh my gosh.
I know. But that is where I stayed in this beautiful, beautiful place, surrounded by this tropical forest. And that's where I did a lot of my writing for this book, was there. In fact, I told the owners recently, I said, remember all the writing I was doing? I said, well, here, my book is published. So things happen. You wonder, why do things happen? And things happen for a reason. And it was so conducive to writing. And that's where I just about finished the book. I actually came back to Southern California and finished it here. But I did a lot of serious writing while I was in Kauai.
Well, I think that's where the poetry must come from. I mean, from you, but in this, I love Kauai myself. So it's, well, what a great place to be doing some writing. I think it's just an inspirational place itself.
And it's a slower pace of life, which I talk about. That's another thing that, people say, well, what did you learn? Being in Mongolia and being in Cambodia and Kauai, I learned to slow down. And it really is important to me, and it's hard to do here in Southern California. I miss that slower pace of life. I mean, things get done, but it's not crazy sometimes like it can be. So that's, yes, I do miss that, and that is something that I try to work on here, or just stay in touch with that. Slow down.
Yes, so that's an important lesson, really, for all of us to learn, is about that and what that more hectic, frenzied pace does to our health. Some of us can still kind of survive through it, but is it the best way? And finding that slower pace, that's good learning.
Right. And I also learned to, when I say the phrase that we all use, it's Mongolia, I learned to, I learned to adjust and not, again, growing up basically in California, in America, everything is done yesterday, kind of. And I was 3 days into Mongolia. I had just arrived, and this was in 2009 in the summer. 3 days into Mongolia, and the sewage pipes exploded. And I'm like, oh my God, what do we do? And so we had to use water, and we had to do whatever to make it work. And that was my learning. That was the beginning of my learning how to just go with the flow. And I remember my principal looking at me on a couple things like, you're going to be okay. It's okay.
Oh. So that was some great experiences, and right at the outset, and there you survived that. So you knew that you were going to be able to get through probably anything else that came along.
Yeah, I mean, things happened. And, again, I wasn't in Southern California, and not that we have the answers and they don't, but things are just around the world are done differently. And that's what I learned. I've traveled a lot, but traveling and living in a place are two different things. And so I learned to go with the flow. I learned it's Mongolia. I liked who I was becoming, and that's the person that I want to be.
And that you are today. And in addition to that, too, disregarding anything to do with numbers. I think we can get so hung up in our society with numbers. And that's all it is a number. I've heard it said,
Yeah.
How old would you be if you didn't know how old you are? So
yeah,
there you
I know
are.
That quote.
Isn't that great?
That's a great quote. Yes. I look at that all the time because, people, want to, and they, they don't know. I mean, they, kind of want to put you in a box and you put yourself in a box too. So it's,
Yes, we sometimes are the culprits of doing that, but you are overcoming all of that. And so we've mentioned the book is so readily available at online and at Barnes & Noble. You also share your adventures in a blog. So let's share that address with our listeners, Diane.
Okay, it's Diane Height thewonderingnomad.blogspot.com. And I started that. I had been doing other things on the internet, but I really wanted to get into the blog. And I started this back in 2011 when I got a job in Indonesia. And so that was really 2011, 2012. So that was the beginning of my blog. And, I share a lot. I'm a photographer also. So a lot of it are my pictures, but I like little anecdotes too, and people enjoy reading the blog. And it's nice because I get a lot of positive feedback. So I've just kept it up ever since 2011. And it's obviously lots of pictures and lots of things from Mongolia since it was, 5 years, right? But beautiful pictures around the world, on not just places that I've lived, but places that I have traveled to and, friends and family.
And I think it all then culminates in being a real inspiration and an encouragement for any of the rest of us as to what we can do too. You're doing what you need to do, what Diane's heart is leading her to do. But I think it's still the encouragement, like look around and see what it might be for each one of us.
Exactly. And that's what I said in the beginning. You don't have to go to Mongolia, which is the capital. Ulaanbaatar, UB, is the coldest capital in the world. You don't have to do that. But there's something that maybe you've always wanted to do. Then I say investigate. Do it, try it, and see where it takes you. That's the whole thing. Where is it going to take you? And like we said earlier, We all limit ourselves, and yet the universe has, great plans and ideas for us. And so I would just say, don't limit yourself, and men and women, not just women, but men also.
Exactly. Well, Diane Height, this has just been its own adventure, hearing your experiences and just the positivity and the fun and the hope that exists. And I sure do appreciate that we've had this opportunity to talk about your adventures, and anyone can read about in A Mongolian Memoir.
Thank you so much, Kate, for having me. And again, it's a subject that I love to talk about, so I'm very happy that you included me today. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and feel inspired by all that you're doing, and look forward to hearing more and reading more on your blog spot.
Yes. All right. Good job.
Be well.
Thank you for having me.
That brings us to the end of a very full hour of Inspirational Women with Diane Height and Sunday Morning Magazine with Luke Miner, director of WA 529. I'm Kate Daniels, your host, and I greatly appreciate your sharing this hour with me and these special guests. For details you might have missed or information you'd like to know, please just send me an email, kated@warm1069.com, and I will get right back to you. Also, if you'd like to listen again or share these important stories with your family and friends, find the podcast on our Warm 1069 webpage. Just click on the podcast tab, then either of the show names, and then look for the guest names. I now wish you and your family a day of having an important conversation about dreams, possibilities, and even drawing up a plan on how to make them real. Have a week of the same, and then please plan to join me again next weekend for another hour of Sunday Morning Magazine and Inspirational Women on Warm 1069. Good morning.